Gil, I mean, I remember walking out and CJ, the producer of the show, he's like, Shannon, this is going to blow up the internet.
Shannon Sharpe says he's temporarily stepping away from ESPN in the wake of a $50 million lawsuit accusing him of rape. A woman filed suit against Sharpe on Sunday, accusing him of raping her twice.
The fall of Shannon Sharpe didn't creep up on the industry. It came barreling down like a freight train through a fireworks factory one day. He's America's favorite uncle on ESPN's First Take the Next. He's stepping down, drowning in allegations, so graphic and ugly that even the suits at Disney had to look away and politely clear their throats. The man was standing on the verge of a $100 million media empire, swinging open doors for truth-tellers like Cat Williams and Monique on Club Shay Shay, flipping the bird at the Hollywood establishment without blinking, and then boom, the lawsuit hit, and everything started catching fire.
But it just took off.
Yeah.
And everybody was they were just shaking their head. I was like, what? They're like, Shannon, this is going to go crazy.
Yeah.
At the heart of the chaos was Jane Doe, a young woman who met Sharpe in a Los Angeles gym in 2023. When she was barely old enough to rent a car without a cosigner, according to her, what started as a rocky relationship fast-tracked into something sinister. The allegations ripped through the public consciousness like a Molotov cocktail in a linen store. Manipulation, threats, recorded encounters without permission, and brutal physical assaults. So disturbing, they sounded like deleted scenes from a snuff film that nobody was supposed to watch, and of course, like a vulture circling over fresh carnage, Tony Busby swooped in. You know Busby, the Houston Bulldog attorney, who never met a black celebrity he didn't want to sue into oblivion. Diddy, Jay-Z, Deshaun Watson, and now Shannon Sharpe. If there's a Mount Rushmore of civil litigation against famous black men, Busby is carving his own face into it with a chainsaw. He wasn't just coming for blood, he was gunning for $50 million US, a jury trial, and a public scalping so vicious it would leave permanent scars. Starbase team immediately cried foul, spinning the story faster than a roulette wheel in a Vegas back room. They called it a shakedown, said it was consensual, painted Jane Doe as an OnlyFans model trying to finesse her way into early retirement. His lawyer, Lanny Davis, a crisis specialist who's basically the cleanup crew after a celebrity hits the self-destruct button, stood in front of the cameras quoting messages where Jane Doe allegedly begged for callers and fantasies and begged for more. But funny thing, Davis never showed the receipts, no screenshots, no text logs, just a lot of trust me bro energy, which, let's be honest, hits different when there's audio floating around of Sharpe growling that he was going to choke her and saying she didn't have a choice in the matter.
And that the was about handcuffs, choking, putting on dog collars.
And that wasn't even the worst of it, because buried in the avalanche of public statements and lawyer speak was a little nugget Sharpe's camp couldn't deny. Even if they wanted to, he had offered her a $10 million settlement in writing during mediation before the lawsuit ever went public. 10 million reasons for her to stay silent, 10 million red flags for the rest of us to wonder if this so-called shakedown had a little more smoke behind it than Shannon wanted to admit. You don't drop 10 million United States dollars on someone you're accusing of blackmail unless there's a serious skeleton rattling in your walk-in closet. Meanwhile, the public was tearing itself apart like feral cats over a turkey carcass. On one side, Sharpe's fans, the ride or die crowd that would believe him if he said the sky was pink and gravity was optional, insisted it was a setup, a witch hunt, the latest chapter in the long, ugly story of powerful black men being brought down the moment they start pulling back the curtain. And on the other side, the skeptics, the realists, the people who didn't give a damn about Club Shay or a viral Cat Williams interview, people who looked at a 56-year-old man getting entangled with a 19-year-old and said, buddy, you cooked yourself, before the lawyers ever showed up.
And I don't know where Candy is, but that is waiting for all of us.
Add Dave to the mix. Add Dave to the mix. And now you're not just playing with gasoline. You're tossing grenades into the bonfire. Dave, who has never been shy about calling out Hollywood's roaches when the lights turn on, hinted darkly that this lawsuit didn't smell like an accident to him. This wasn't about one messy relationship spiraling out of control. It was about power, about what happens when a black man builds a machine that's too loud, too independent, too unpredictable, about what happens when you let Cat Williams, Monique, and a parade of truth bombs walk onto your platform and start tossing live hand grenades at the billionaires who write the checks. According to people close to Dave, he had warned Shannon after the Cat Williams interview went nuclear when it broke YouTube records and made the Hollywood old guard break into cold sweats, that it was only a matter of time before they came for him. That's how the game works. Dave said you get too big, too loud, too free, and suddenly every skeleton you ever thought you buried shows up with a megaphone and a lawsuit. Sharpe, it seems, didn't listen, or maybe he thought his charisma could carry him through the storm. Either way, the hit came fast and dirty. And it wasn't just about lawsuits. It was about a coordinated humiliation campaign, the kind of silent war that doesn't get announced with press releases, but shows up in the back rooms where billion-dollar deals get made. Shannon was on the verge of a media deal that would have changed the landscape. 100 million United States dollars reportedly on the table. That kind of money isn't just life-changing, it's powering. It means you're not just renting space on the stage anymore, you own the whole damn theater. And right when he was about to grab the keys, here comes the lawsuit, the scandal, the headlines that Disney could not and would not stomach.
But a lot of the stuff he was saying, because I don't live in that world. People think because, oh, Shannon, you live in Hollywood, you have that. You must have heard. You must have been. No, bro.
Shannon tried to fight it the only way he knew how, with that old school grit, those fiery Instagram videos where he looked straight into the camera and called it all a setup, a coordinated effort to smear him and scare him back into the safe little box the industry had built. He even doxed Jane Doe, dragging her OnlyFans account and real name into the public square like a medieval punishment. But instead of winning sympathy, it only fed the fire. Now critics said he was reckless, dangerous, that he was putting her in real danger to protect his own ego, and somehow in trying to save his own image, Shannon made himself look even more guilty to people who were already tilting their heads and squinting at his story. Meanwhile, Tony Busby was sitting back in Texas loading the shotgun with new rounds. Every time Shannon tried to explain, Busby popped up with another tidbit: the $10 million offer, the unedited audio, a fresh reminder that once you open the door to dirty laundry, you don't get to pick which stains the world sees first. And behind Busby, like smoke trailing from a wildfire, was the larger question nobody could shake. Was Shannon Sharpe just another reckless celebrity who thought he was untouchable? Or was he the latest black man fed into the wood chipper the moment he tried to build something too powerful to be controlled?
10 million in a day. And counting, still going up.
10 million.
It didn't help that whispers started to surface about a previous settlement at Fox when Sharpe was still co-hosting Undisputed, a female production assistant, a private settlement worth hundreds of thousands, an incident of playful physical interaction that somehow left enough damage for the checkbook to come out. No charges, no court case. But in a post-meta world, the optics were about as friendly as a bear trap. And oh yeah, if that wasn't enough smoke for you, there was also the story from 2010 when Sharpe temporarily stepped away from CBS amid another allegation involving a woman named Michael Evans, who claimed he heard her after a fight over supposed infidelity, restraining orders, civil lawsuits, claims of threats, and intimidation. A grim little trail of breadcrumbs stretching back over a decade, each one ignored, minimized, or quietly paid off until
are now beginning to bring up past things that have happened with Shannon Sharpe, including a temporary restraining order that was filed against him back in 2010 from a woman that he was dealing with at the time, who accused him of sexual assault. He said in different things. Now, this was dropped. It was dismissed. That restraining.
It was dismissed, that restraint. And as all these ghosts started crawling out of the woodwork, Shannon's shakedown narrative started to look less like a confident defense and more like a desperate spin. He wasn't being targeted for no reason. Critics said he was just being held accountable at the exact moment it hurt the most, when the money was on the table, when the empire was about to get built, when there was finally something massive to lose. And so while Shannon Sharpe was posting videos about fighting back and standing on truth, while Dave was whispering about shadow, wars and industry takedowns, the rest of the world was watching one undeniable truth unfold in real time. Whether Shannon was guilty or innocent, it didn't matter anymore. The game was already in motion. The power machine he had spent years trying to join had turned on him, and it was hungry, and the next mobs, they weren't going to be polite. They weren't going to be clean, because deep beneath the surface of this scandal, under the lawsuits and Instagram rants, something even darker was starting to slither into view. And as the smoke thickened around Shannon Sharpe's empire, another shot rang out, one nobody saw coming, because just as the lawsuit against him started to go viral, Dave decided he wasn't going to sit on the sidelines sipping tea like the rest of Hollywood's cowards. No, he grabbed a mic and lit another match. And this time, the fire spread straight into the comedy world's fractured, bleeding heart.
All right, I'm at war with the Illuminati too, but what part of the war is ethering Cedric the Entertainer?
Dave didn't just call out the industry machine that he believes is trying to destroy Shannon. He took direct aim at the very man who helped set off the original domino, Cat Williams, in a move so sharp it felt personal. Dave let it rip that Cat wasn't just out here telling truths, he was wrecking his own people, throwing stones at black comics, gassing up white ones, and doing it all with a grin wide enough to fit every bad intention on the West Coast inside. Dave made it clear, it's one thing to expose Hollywood's underbelly, it's another thing entirely to turn that scalpel on your own community, while letting the real puppet masters slip away clean. For everything I'm telling. And suddenly a new question cracked the air. Was Cat Williams really standing up for the truth, or was he just another pawn, a wild card being used to divide and conquer, throwing rocks at every black success story that didn't kneel and kiss the ring? Because when you break it down, it's impossible not to notice Cat's Firestorm interview at Club Shay called out every big-name black comic who dared to build something, dared to go mainstream, dared to survive the same machine that once tried to break them. Cedric, Steve Harvey, Kevin Hart, Ricky Smiley, Chris Tucker. Not one major white comedian even caught a stray shot. Dave didn't say it outright, but he didn't have to. The message was burned into every word. When you only tear down your own, you are doing their dirty work for them. Meanwhile, Cat, for all his so-called truth-telling, stayed locked into his narrative. Like a heat-seeking missile in interviews, he doubled down, claiming he had calculated every jab, every insult, every wound, planned to obliterate careers, but chose mercy at the last second. Mercy, he said, because truth could have been much worse. Mercy, he said, because he didn't want to destroy, just to warn. But behind that cool storytelling veneer, the cracks started to show. Why erase the knockout blows? If it was all about integrity, why go after the same black legends the industry's been trying to erase for decades? Why pick a side in a war that wasn't supposed to have sides? Something you wish you were better at dealing with liars. The fallout wasn't just theoretical, it was cold and immediate. Cedric the Entertainer, Steve Harvey, and Kevin Hart clapped back hard, firing off statements, Instagram jabs, and calculated shrugs designed to downplay the damage, while privately seething at how a peer had given every blog and troll the ammunition they needed to start a civil war. And while the comedy rolled through chairs across the family dinner table, the real architects of the industry's quiet, bloody rule sat back and laughed, because chaos among the talent is the oldest trick in the book. While the black comedy kings were busy clawing at each other's thrones, Shannon Sharpe was being dragged out of his own by a lawsuit thicker than quicksand, a perfect distraction, a perfect storm. And it wasn't just comedians watching from the sidelines. Every major figure who ever tried to punch above their weight in Hollywood started to feel the ice creeping up their backs. When Dave talked about Mariah Carey suddenly branded crazy after a historic contract, about Martin Lawrence waving a gun in the street, screaming about invisible enemies, about ye being built up just to be publicly dismantled, he wasn't speaking in hypotheticals. He was holding a cracked mirror up to the entire system. And Shannon's scandal was the newest, rawest reflection staring back.
You decide whether or not you believe him. Was it tough hearing some of the things that he was saying? Yes, because I have a personal relationship with Earthquake. I've had Steve Harvey on the show.
The real nightmare wasn't that Shannon might lose Club Shay Shay, it wasn't that ESPN would ghost him like a Tinder date after the bill came, it was that his $100 million destiny was already being rewritten behind closed doors before the ink on any deal could dry, before Shannon could walk into the building with keys to the kingdom. They had already planted the story that would justify locking the gates, because once the narrative shifts, once you're problematic, once you're dangerous, once you're bad for business, it doesn't matter what the truth is. The room will get very quiet, the calls will stop, and the offers will dry up like a puddle under desert sun. And nobody is going to say you were blacklisted. They're just going to say, it's a bad time, maybe next year. And while Shannon fought for his life in the court of public opinion, the media that once cheered him on was busy sharpening its knives. Every old headline about his personal life got resurrected like a zombie army. Every questionable moment from his past was dragged into the spotlight, stripped of context, and weaponized. Old incidents with female coworkers settled quietly behind closed doors were paraded across headlines as if fresh blood had just been spilled. Exes he hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had new lawsuits, new accusations, new stories designed to paint him less like a flawed man and more like a cartoon villain drawn by his worst enemies. It was the blueprint. It's the same pattern Dave warned about 100 times before. Build you up, make you a king, let you taste the power. And then when you start to think you can say no to their deals, when you start to think you can build something that doesn't need their permission, they pull the floor out from under you and watch you fall.
Also, the Shannon Sharpe ESPN, does he still keep his job conversation is beginning to, I was going to say beginning to happen, but it's been happening, but I think now it's beginning to get louder because of different things that Attorney Busby has released, including the audios. So right now the conversation is, why is Shannon Sharpe still able to be?
Sharpe tried to spin it. He tried to call it all a misunderstanding, tried to explain that private settlements weren't admissions of guilt, but attempts to avoid being publicly shredded. His lawyers called it protecting his personal life, the classic celebrity maneuver to prevent salacious details from hitting the tabloids. But the public doesn't read nuance, the public reads headlines. And when the story is Shannon Sharpe offered millions to silence allegations, the damage is already done. And just to add salt to the wound, another woman popped up from his past when Michelle Evans, dragging her own horror story into the spotlight. Claims of threats, coercion, restraining orders, a pattern emerging. Critics whispered, maybe not the same exact playbook as Jane Doe's lawsuit, but close enough to poison the well. Sharpe's camp fired back that Evans was unstable, that she had a criminal record, that she was trying to piggyback on the latest scandal to cash out. But again, when you're already meeting, even the smallest cut feels fatal. The pressure wasn't just personal, it was institutional. ESPN, Disney, and every brand that had invested in Sharpe's cleaned up, relatable, unbreakable image suddenly had a serious liability on their hands. It didn't matter that Shannon hadn't been convicted of anything. Didn't matter that these were civil suits, not criminal cases. In the court of corporate America, optics are the only currency that matters, and right now Shannon's stock was sinking faster than a stone tied to a cinder block.
He only eats the He didn't say anything about any of these white boys.
In the final insult, Shannon Sharpe had just spent a full year rebuilding his empire from scratch after walking away from FS once undisputed, and his nuclear fallout with Skip This. He had clawed his way back to relevance, built Club Shay Shay into a juggernaut, turned himself into the media darling who could sit across from presidential candidates and roast sports legends in the same breath. He had escaped one plantation just to find himself trapped on another, this time built out of silent accusations and invisible chains. Even Dave, who had been warning about these industry hit jobs for decades, couldn't help but sound exhausted as he watched it unfold. Because at a certain point, even the smartest, funniest, most powerful black men in entertainment start to look like chess pieces on someone else's board. Move too fast, check. Move too slow, check. Speak out, checkmate. And the next big bombshell, it wasn't going to come from inside a courtroom. It wasn't going to come from another Instagram rant. It was going to come from the places that truly decide who gets to speak and who gets erased from boardrooms, where billionaires who never watched a single episode of Club Shay were already signing deals with his replacements from conference calls where Shannon Sharpe's name wasn't spoken with anger or sadness, just shrugged off like a failed stock option. The machine that eats its own heroes was revving up for another feast. And this time, it was bringing the silverware.